6 years.
Okay, were you there in 2016?
Yes.
And are you here under a subpoena as the corporate designee for Action Property Management?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could please pull up Exhibit 1 and just scroll to page 15 of the PDF, please. Does this look like a copy of the subpoena that you received?
Yes.
Is it okay if I call your building ECB?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that ECB has produced these 3 categories of documents and films?
Yes.
Please go to Exhibit 2 and scroll to page 8. And does this look like the topics of the deposition of the subpoena for testimony?
Okay.
Is it your understanding that you're the most knowledgeable person on these topics?
I am the most knowledgeable within Action Property Management as it relates to these items.
Are you responsible for managing any of the records or managing, preserving any of the records and videos at Action Property Management?
Specifically as it relates to Eastern Columbia, this is the only property and building for Action that I manage. So Action as a whole, I can't speak to that, but as for ECB, yes.
Thanks. And this whole deposition will be just referring to ECB related to Action Property Management. What was your role in locating the videos responsive to the subpoena? to the subpoena?
The videos had been saved from the original case. I don't recall the exact year that was. I think this is number 4 now. So I provided the video that was requested, that had been saved as the only videos that were requested and saved. And
who saved them? Was that you or someone at Action Property Management?
I had initially worked on saving them when I received the first list. And I guess I don't know if you're referring to the first set of videos that was ever requested or subsequent subpoenas, I guess, as this refers to, that were already saved, and I just transferred the already saved documents.
So we'll get into more details. But when was the first time you saved security footage relating to ECB in response to a subpoena?
Like I said, I don't recall the exact year. It was the first case between Depp and Heard as a response to subpoenas that we had received from both parties.
And what was your role in preserving those videos from that first time until now?
Can you expand on what you mean by preserving?
Sure. Were these videos kept securely in the same format at
Yes.
ECB? And were you responsible for making sure that they were kept securely and in the same format at ECB?
Yes.
How many cameras are there at ECB in 2016?
I don't recall the exact number. We've since switched out the entire system and expanded on it. I believe we doubled the cameras, which we currently have 44. So I would be speculating, but I think it's probably around 22 or so. Originally.
And where in 2016 were the cameras positioned?
Throughout the common areas.
And did ECB take them as a matter of course, sort of all day, 24 hours a day?
The recordings were 24/7. The concierge staff periodically does review them, just as part of their daily duties. But the video footage is recorded onto a DVR back then, I believe it was like a 20-day period before it was written over.
Is it correct that you're not represented by an attorney?
I am not.
Did you review any documents or videos before the deposition?
I did not.
Have you ever communicated with Mr. Depp's former attorney, Mr. Waldman?
Yes.
And did Mr. Waldman, do you know if he drafted a declaration for you in 2016?
Yes.
Is Action Property Management, I believe you said this earlier, is it the property management company for ECB?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that in 2016, Depp owned the top floor penthouses in ECB, penthouses 1 through 5?
Yes.
And are you aware of whether Amber Heard was a resident at ECB in 2016?
Yes.
How many times have you seen Amber Heard? Personally?
Maybe, I would be guessing, my best guess would be maybe half a dozen to a dozen times.
Do you remember when those times were? Like what year?
I don't recall the exact year, but likely 2016.
So moving to May 21st of 2016, are you aware that officers were called to the penthouse of ECB on that day?
Yes, I am aware.
Were you there the day that the officers were called to ECB in May of 2016?
I was not at the building when officers were called.
Do you have any firsthand knowledge of why the officers were called on May 21st, 2016?
Firsthand, no, I do not.
Did you see Amber at all on May 21st?
Not that I recall.
Did you see Amber on May 22nd, 2016?
Not that I recall.
Did you see Amber on May 23rd, 2016?
The timeline is 2016. I don't recall the specifics of those dates specifically.
Can you testify to whether you saw Amber Heard at all the week of May 21st, 2016 personally?
I don't recall the dates now.
Did you personally interact with Mr. Depp at ECB in 2016?
No, I never did.
Have you seen Mr. Depp on video footage in 2016?
Yes.
You could please bring up Exhibit 3, please. How would you describe Mr. Depp's behavior in that video?
I would describe it as animated.
And do you have any, in the times that you've seen Mr. Depp at ECB, did you ever observe Mr. Depp in an animated manner like you saw in the video?
I do recall a video of Mr. Depp in the elevator, I guess, in an animated state.
And was that in 2016?
Yes.
And do you have any familiarity with, have you ever seen Mr. Depp appear angry in the times you've seen him at ECB?
I wouldn't say angry. I use the term animated.
And what does the term animated mean to you?
What I saw on the video.
When were you first, Mr. Patterson, when were you first contacted for video footage after the May 21st police call to the building?
I don't recall the exact time frame.
Do you remember who contacted you about the May 2016 video footage? Who first contacted you?
Do not recall.
You know who selected what copy to preserve and what to preserve?
The attorneys from both sides submitted a list of video times and dates to be preserved.
And do you remember what times and dates those were, roughly?
I don't have a time frame now.
Do you have a rough time frame of what the videos that were preserved, what times those covered?
My rough recollection is that May 2016 timeframe.
Was it after the May 21st incident, that time frame?
Yes.
And do you know what role Mr. Depp's lawyers played in the selection process?
The attorneys came to the office here, set up a viewing area, reviewed video footage, took notes based on that review, and those dates and times were provided to retrieve the video and save.
And do you remember which attorneys came, either their names or who they were, came to review the footage?
I don't recall. There's attorneys from both sides that came very close together, and I don't recall who or what side they were on.
And was all of the footage that they selected preserved?
Yes.
And were all of those videos that were preserved taken in the ordinary course of ECB's business operations?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure. It's ordinary, is it not, for ECB to have these cameras rolling, and the videos that were preserved were from those cameras that were rolling in the ordinary course of business?
Yes, correct.
And do you know how many video clips ECB preserved pursuant to the requests from attorneys?
I don't recall the exact number. It was whatever was on the subpoena. We provided exactly what was on there.
Does the number 87 ring a bell? For how many videos?
Yes.
And do you know where the videos were maintained from 2016 until today?
They were on a portable drive here in my office.
At ECB?
Yes.
And how are they maintained?
It was on a portable hard drive.
And as far as you know, is that in the same condition that it was in 2016?
To my knowledge, yes.
And were the 87 videos preserved on 3 DVD discs or in some other format?
So through the subpoenas, the videos were provided to the different teams. I vaguely remember CDs. They weren't stored on CDs for purposes here. I just have the portable hard drive.
Any more video footage other than those 87 clips that has been preserved?
No.
And what happened to any other video footage that was not preserved?
Like I had mentioned earlier, the DVR has a capacity of so many days and it rewrites over itself.
And just for clarity, I just want to make it clear, how did you decide what May 2016 video to preserve?
The only videos that were preserved were the ones called out via the subpoena by the various law firms, or the 2 law firms.
And do you know why there's no footage from May 23rd, 2016?
I do not.
And you mentioned that both sides requested preservation of the video footage. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Is it your understanding that the press at some point became interested in getting statements from ECB relating to the May 21st incident?
Yes.
Did the press ask ECB or its employees for statements?
Yes.
And what's the policy of APM or ECB with respect to press statements about residents?
The policy is that we do not give statements to press.
And did Amber ever ask you about that?
Yes, she did.
In 2016, do you know if Rocky Pennington and Josh Drew lived in one of the penthouses at ECB?
Yes.
And did you ever see Rocky with Amber?
Yes.
If we could pull up Exhibit 4, please. Mr. Patterson, does this refresh your recollection about which penthouse Rocky Pennington lived in?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson, I'd like to go to the video footage now and go through some video footage. And let's start with Exhibit 5, please. In particular, around timestamp 18:55:19.
Now, Your Honor, I think we need to switch it.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. Okay.
Mr. Patterson, do you recognize this area?
Yes.
And where is it?
This is the mezzanine vestibule between the building and the parking garage.
And do you know if you or someone else at ECB was responsible for pulling this security footage and keeping it at ECB?
I did pull some video early on. However, the task was very overwhelming and took away from my daily duties. So the task was sent off to an outside party to pull all the videos based on the subpoena list.
And what was the outside party's name?
I don't recall offhand.
But was it at the direction of you or ECB?
Yes.
To assist you with time, or is that why?
Yes, I did not have the time to go through all of the video footage to record it.
Sure. Do the ECB video cameras have time and date stamps as a matter of course?
Yes.
And in your experience, are those time and date stamps relatively accurate?
Relatively accurate, yes.
And did you recognize the men in that exhibit?
Can you replay it, please?
Sure. And while we're waiting for the men to appear, how would you describe the quality of these videos?
Compared to our new updated cameras, not as clear.
And can you be more specific about not clear? Would you consider these to be grainy?
I would say this video here in the pause state does appear to be somewhat grainy.
And does it appear to be just a little bit blurry?
Yes, this video as I see it now looks a little blurry.
And did you recognize the men in this video clip?
Yes, I do recognize Mr. Depp. The first gentleman looks familiar. I can't place him at the moment.
And do you have any reason to believe that the date and timestamp are not accurate?
It does seem consistent with the time stamping of the video. So unless it was somehow altered, I would say it appears to be accurate.
And the video camera that you preserved in your office at ECB since 2016 has not been altered. Is that correct?
Correct.
Let's move to Exhibit 6, please. You recognize where this is?
Yes.
And where is it?
This is the mezzanine level again. Vestibule, the mail room is directly behind it, leading to the elevator vestibule.
And does that look like it accurately portrays the scene?
This shot accurately depicts the area, correct?
And do you recognize those men?
As I previously stated, I do recognize Mr. Depp. The other ones I do not.
And did the date and timestamp look accurate?
Yes.
If we could please go to Exhibit 7.
Again, it's gonna have to be switched to our side.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Switch back, okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And do you recognize where this is, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and does that look like a clip from the surveillance video in the elevator at ECB?
Yes.
And does it accurately portray the scene?
I don't know what you mean by scene.
Does it look like ECB, like the elevator at ECB?
Yes.
And is the quality of this a little bit grainy as well?
As it's displayed right now, yes.
And do the date and timestamps look accurate, like ECB keeps in the regular course of business?
Yes.
And could we please play the video so we can see who's getting on? And do you recognize those people getting on the elevator, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I do recognize Mr. Depp.
And is smoking permitted on elevators at ECB?
No, it's not.
Let's move to Exhibit 8, please. Do you recognize this as ECB video footage?
Yes.
And do you recognize the men on the elevator?
As I previously mentioned, Mr. Depp only.
And do those date and timestamps look accurate?
Yes.
How would you describe Mr. Depp's movements on this elevator?
I'll use the description animated again.
Is he also swaying from side to side? Does this footage generally look like the footage that you preserved from 2016?
Yes.
Let's move to exhibit.
Okay, switch it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And do you recognize this area?
Yes.
What is it?
This is the same shot that was previously shown, the mezzanine vestibule.
And is it shot from one of the ECB surveillance cameras?
Yes.
And does this look like one of the ones that was preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And do the date and time stamps look accurate as far as you know?
Yes.
And were you responsible for pulling this security footage generally?
Generally, yes.
And do you recognize the people in that video?
Excuse me. I do recognize Mr. Depp.
And what's Mr. Depp holding?
It appears to be a jacket.
And how would you describe how he's holding it?
with his left hand.
And if we could please move to Exhibit 11. And do you recognize this as ECB surveillance footage?
Yes.
And where was that footage taken?
This is back in the mezzanine vestibule between the building and the garage.
Say the last part. Vestibule what?
Between the building and the garage.
And was this one of the videos that was preserved since 2016 by ECB?
I don't recall this specific clip, but yes, this is video that was preserved.
And did the date and time stamps look accurate, like they would be on ECB footage?
Yeah.
Do you recognize those people?
I recognize Mr. Depp.
And does Mr. Depp appear to be leaving the building?
That would be the pathway from the building into the garage.
And does this look like true and accurate footage from the ECB video surveillance preserved since 2016?
Yes.
Moving right along to Exhibit 12, please. And where is this video, Mr. Patterson?
This video is the call box at the lobby entrance on Broadway.
And do you recognize that as security footage from one of the ECB surveillance cameras that's been preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And does the date and time stamp look accurate to you?
Yes.
And move to Exhibit 13, please. And do you recognize? Where this is?
Yes.
Where?
This is in the main lobby of the building.
And does that look like a surveillance clip from one of the ECB surveillance cameras that's been preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And it says May 21st, 2016 at 20:53. Does that look like an accurate date and time stamp from the ECB footage?
Yes.
And that looks like a true and accurate copy of the surveillance has been preserved.
Yes.
Moving to Exhibit 14, please. You recognize this clip?
Yes.
And does it look like it's from one of ECB's security footage cameras that's been preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And where was this footage taken?
This is the shot of the front desk.
And would you agree that the footage is also a little bit grainy?
As it is displayed now, yes.
And do the date and timestamps look accurate to you?
Yes.
And do you recognize this as surveillance footage from one of the ECB cameras that's been preserved since 2016?
Yes.
Do you recognize either of the officers?
I recognize them as officers.
And does the date and timestamp look accurate as far as you know?
Yes.
Move to Exhibit 16, please. Does this also appear to be a ECB surveillance camera footage?
Yes.
And do you recognize that person who just left the elevator?
I do not.
And does this generally appear to be one of the ones that have been preserved since 2016 at ECB?
Yes.
And as far as you know, does the date and timestamp look accurate?
Yes.
And for all of these clips that you've seen, do they appear to you to be true and accurate copies of the footage that have been preserved?
These seem very grainy and slow to me, from what I remember. But these are taken from Eastern Columbia video cameras during this time.
And preserved since that time at ECB?
Correct.
And they were preserved in the same condition?
Yes.
Could we please pull up Exhibit 17? And do you recognize this as a clip from one of the ECB surveillance cameras that's been preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and timestamp accurate?
Yes.
And does that accurately portray the elevator scene at ECB?
Yes.
And can we move to Exhibit 18, please? But do you recognize this as ECB security footage that's been preserved at ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And it looks like an accurate copy of what was preserved, as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
And the date and timestamp, as far as you know, look accurate?
Yes.
Please move to Exhibit 19. And Mr. Patterson, do you know whether or not any of these timestamps are a few seconds off here or there or not?
I do believe there is a few second time discrepancy.
And do you know why there would be a few second time discrepancy, or?
I don't know the reason behind it now.
Okay. And did you recognize that video clip as one of the videos that has been preserved at ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And does that appear to be an accurate copy of one of the surveillance copies that have been preserved?
Yes.
And as far as you know, that the date and timestamp is reasonably accurate, you know, with a couple seconds margin?
Yes.
And please move to Exhibit 20. And do you recognize this as one of the videos that have been taken at ECB, by a surveillance camera at ECB?
Yes.
And are these one of the videos that have been preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, within a few seconds, is the date and time stamp accurate?
As far as I know, yes.
And does it appear to be two officers leaving ECB?
Yes.
And move to Exhibit 21, please. Do you recognize where this is?
Yes.
And what does it look like to you?
This is the same shot from the kiosk camera outside of the lobby on Broadway.
Is it shot from one of the surveillance cameras at ECB?
Yes.
And does that appear to be one of the clips that has been preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate as far as you know?
Yes.
Exhibit 22. Can we move to that, please? And does this appear to be, this clip appear to be taken from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And which camera?
This is the lobby, one of the lobby cameras.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was preserved at ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate?
Yes, within a few seconds.
And were those two officers walking in this video?
Yes, those appear to be two officers.
Or does this look like how the lobby? Does this look like how the lobby looks in the video's surveillance preserved by ECB?
Yes.
Let's move to Exhibit 23. Do you recognize this as video footage taken from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that's been preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, are the date and time stamps accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And do those appear to be officers talking to the concierge?
Yes.
And move to Exhibit 24, please. And do you recognize this as video footage taken by one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And was this one of the clips that were taken by ECB and preserved since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, within a few seconds, are the date and time stamps accurate?
Yes.
Can we please go to Exhibit 27? And do you recognize this video? Is one of the videos from the ECB security footage that have been preserved since 2016 by ECB?
Yes.
As far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Calls for expert opinion.
And move to Exhibit 28, please. Do you recognize this video as one of the ECB surveillance videos?
Yes.
And which surveillance video? Which part of the building?
This is the lobby.
Okay, and does this appear to be one of the clips that has been taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, are the date and time stamps accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And do those look like two officers in the lobby to you?
Yes.
Move to 29. And do you recognize this video is taken from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And was this one of the clips that have been taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And this appears to be an accurate copy of what was preserved.
Yes.
And move to Exhibit 30, please. And do you recognize this as footage taken from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that has been taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And that appears to be an accurate copy of what was preserved.
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
May we please go to Exhibit 30? And do you recognize this as one of the video clips from ECB video surveillance?
Yes.
And is this the elevator camera?
One of, yes.
And do you recognize who's on the elevator?
It appears to be Amber.
And does this look like one of the video clips that have been taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, within a few seconds, is the date and time stamp accurate?
Yes.
Can we please move to Exhibit 30? And does this appear to be one of the video clips taken from the ECB security footage?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, are the date and time stamps accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And while we're waiting for someone to appear, do you recognize the person at the front desk, if you can see him? And do you recognize who's walking into the video now?
I do recognize that as Amber. I'm trying to get a facial recognition of the person at the desk.
Can you see him now?
Yes.
And who's that?
His name is Cornelius.
Do you know why Mr. Harrell and Amber would be going around that corner?
The package room is around the corner.
And does this look like one of the video clips that's been preserved and taken by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And does the date and time stamp look accurate as within a few seconds as far as you know?
Yes.
And does this look like an accurate clip from the ECB footage?
Yes.
I'd like to move this in as Exhibit 31 and move to Exhibit 32, please? And do you recognize who's walking through the picture in this video?
Yes.
Who is it?
Amber Heard.
And does this look like a video clip taken from one of the ECB surveillance cameras?
Yes.
And does this look like one of the videos that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, are the date and time stamps accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
I'd like to move to Exhibit 33, please. And does this look like video footage taken from one of the ECB surveillance cameras?
Yes.
And does this look like one of the clips taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, are the date and time stamps accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
I'd like to move to admit this as Exhibit 33. And do you recognize who's in this video right now?
Yes.
Who is it?
Amber Heard.
And where is she?
This is the service corridor outside of the package room.
Okay, and if we could please rewind the tape a little bit and see who Amber was with. Do you recognize that person?
Yes, that's Cornelius.
And what's his last name?
Powell?
And,
Errol?
and was he walking out? Where was he walking out from?
The package room.
Where is this in ECB?
This is on the main level service corridor.
And would you agree with me that this footage is also a little bit grainy?
Yes.
If we could please, I'd like to move to admit Exhibit 33. And if we could please move to Exhibit 34. And do you recognize this as one of the ECB security camera footage clips?
Yes.
And does appear to be one of the video footage clips taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
As far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And do you recognize who's in this video?
It appears to be Amber Heard.
And do you know where this video is?
Can you expand on that?
Sure. Is it in an elevator? In ECB?
Yes.
And can we go back to that exhibit, please? Just for a minute. And can we go to roughly timestamp 18/22/26? Would you agree with me that the video footage here is a little bit grainy?
Yes.
And does it look a little bit fuzzy to you?
Yes.
And can we please move to Exhibit 35? And does this look like video footage from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, did the date and time stamps look accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
If we could please move to timestamp, see, 18/41/29. And do you recognize who just walked in the elevator?
It appears to be Amber. I'm not sure who the gentleman is.
Does that video appear a little bit grainy to you?
As it's displayed now.
And if we could please move to Exhibit think we're on 36. And does this appear to be footage from one of the security cameras at ECB?
Yes.
And who just walked through the footage?
Amber Heard and a gentleman.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
As far as you know, is the date, stamp, and time reasonably accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that that also is a little bit grainy in that footage?
Yes, as it's displayed now.
And if we could please move to Exhibit 37. And does this appear to be a video camera from one of ECB's video cameras?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And did you recognize who walked through that video?
Amber Heard and an unknown gentleman.
And is this video also a little bit grainy as it appears?
As it appears now, yes.
I'd like to move in Exhibit 37. And please move to Exhibit 38. And does this appear to be a video taken from one of the security cameras at ECB?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
And if we could, let's see, go to 2256, please, a timestamp wise. And do you recognize who's getting on the elevator?
I cannot see her face, but it appears to be Amber Heard.
Move to exhibit, this is 38, and then we can move to 39, please. Does this look like a true and accurate copy of or surveillance footage from one of the ECB cameras?
Yes.
And does this look like one of the clips that was taken and preserved in 2016 by ECB?
Yes.
And when I say by ECB, I mean either you or someone under your direction, like the contractor you spoke of. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And I'd like to move this in as Exhibit 39, please. And do you know who is working behind the desk in this video?
Yes.
And who's that?
Alex Romero.
Okay, can we move to Exhibit 40, please? And does this appear to be a video from one of the ECB security cameras?
Yes.
And does this appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ECB since 2016?
Yes.
And as far as you know, is the date and time stamp accurate within a few seconds?
Yes.
I'd like to move this in as Exhibit 40, please. And if we could go to timestamp 21/17/33, please. And if we could move, oh yeah, thanks. And do you recognize who's getting on the elevator?
Yes.
And who is it?
Amber, Rocky, and her sister Whitney.
And would you agree with me that the video footage is a little bit grainy in this clip?
Yes, as is displayed at the moment.
And does that date and time stamp look accurate within a few seconds as far as you know?
Yes.
And does that appear to be one of the clips that was taken and preserved by ACB since 2016?
Yes.
I'd like to move to admit that as Exhibit 40, please. And move to 41, please.
All right, Council, could you pause it for a moment? Let's just go ahead and, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break till 4 o'clock, okay? All right, thank you. Go ahead. All right, we'll come back at 4 o'clock then, okay?
Thanks, Roger.